So we had a robust sample of Australian business leaders. Majority of the respondents are business leaders in the report, and we're asking them to look at risks from environmental risks to political risks, economic risks, societal risks and technological risks. And I guess it's done through the prism of economic cost, but we're also mindful that there are non-economic impacts of risk. There are intangible impacts, things such as human life, which are obviously don't have an economic value in that sense, although probably some actuaries would disagree with me. But I think we take a multi-dimensional view. So the economic component has one value, and then there are other values that should get equal consideration. And equally, between the different categories of risk, there are different cultures of how people consider risk. So people operating within the social domain, for example, will have a completely different view of risk to people necessarily, say, operating within the economic or the political domain. And we're trying to encourage a view that sort of gives credence to each of those domains, but also looks in particular at how they interact with each other. So this multi-dimensional approach where we're looking at risk perception prospectively, and we're looking at, in particular, the connections between the risks. Climate change is really the standout risk for this year. It's factored quite strongly in the last 3 reports, which is quite interesting when you sort of consider that the environment or the dialogue nationally in terms of the media discussions has changed quite considerably over the last 3 years. You've had the carbon pricing regime introduced this year. You've had plenty of discussion about carbon pricing the year before. The year before that, we came out of one of the most significant droughts in recent history in Australia. Bushfires, floods last year, floods this year. Arguably, some of the other risks have reduced somewhat, I mean, in terms of public perception. But it's interesting that we still see among business leaders stable consideration of environmental risks. Well, we originally started looking at environmental risks on a more componential basis. So we didn't actually designate climate change as a risk per se. We sort of looked at more at the effects. But last year we brought climate change into the survey to sort of capture some of the other risks. And there is a degree of overlap between environmental risk, as you know. We look at climate change. We look at flooding. We look at firestorms, storms and cyclones. And we also look at biodiversity loss, and that has overlap to climate change. The OECD says that to them, biodiversity loss is one of the real red light issues triggered by climate change. If we're looking at Australia as a food producing nation, it's an incredibly important issue. And there's so many interlinkages ecologically in terms of what biodiversity loss means. And one of the things we found out of this year's survey is that's gradually creeping up in importance. Perhaps one of the emerging risks, or perhaps not emerging risks, but perhaps emerging perception of the importance of biodiversity.